Hello, everybody. If it's Wednesday, it's Warhammer. That's right. It's time for another episode of Warhammer Weekly. We're back once again to talk about everything and anything related to Warhammer. Joining me, as always, is my own little Noblar. It's Tom. How you doing, Tom?
Hey, friends.
There it is. His catchphrase is back. Yay for catchphrases. All right. Also joining us this week is Mr. Jeff Egan. Jeff, how you doing, sir?
Not bad. Thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely. We're glad to have you back on the show. And of course, our feature segment today, I had to reach down, how to frame. There we go. Why? Because I had to grab this thing. This is what we're going to be talking about during the feature segment today. We're going to go good, bad, top to bottom, front to back. We're going to talk about the General's Handbook. But of course, first, let's talk about some news. Tommy, what do we got on news?
It was a fairly full week. There's a lot that happened this week, but for me, the big thing was the financial report dropped. Have you guys had a chance to read through kind of some of the notes from it?
I did, yeah. I looked over it.
I read the whole thing before bed last night, and then I went on all the blogs and posted up things. I'm not an accountant. I don't have any training in marketing. I know nothing about it, but I felt like I was entitled to spread my own ideas about it and just shoot them out into the internet and hope it sticks and I convince people to hate the game.
Man, you are not alone, apparently.
No, yeah. No, those are all me. I just have lots of names.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, got it. No, I found it fascinating. I mean, like they laid out the plan last year, and it's like, hey, guess what? We did what we said we were gonna do. Yay! Yeah. I mean, it looked good. I thought it was interesting that they said that they've made more this year with fantasy stuff than they have in a long time. That's pretty fantastic.
Yeah. And I think that, it was always going to be a tough year because AOS's launch was, to be fair, pretty rough, right? And also in launching it, they had to, by necessity almost, rob some from 40K, right? They just were released. They just took release weeks away from 40K.
Yeah, those windows. Yeah.
So I think, overall it was pretty much flat. They're making a lot of money off licensing. Not surprising. They've been licensing everything out. I'm still awaiting on the mugs and everything else for Age of Sigmar. The iPhone 4 covers that we talked about a few weeks back. Very exciting licensing and their merchandising. So I mean, I think that overall the comments are the more interesting thing because as they said, they were like, we said we were going to have more at every price point. That's what we did, and they're right. Like it's they have those little
and they said they've sold all of that they've sold well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, realistically, obviously, things like the starter boxes and the build paint play boxes and the new smaller starter set, a lot of those that came later in the year, it's not like those had a chance to have a big impact. But I want to see them continue going that direction. I think those are all positive things.
Interesting thing in there, besides what you guys have already raised, you hit on a lot of the high points, is they fully acknowledge that they've learned a lot of lessons from the rollout of AOS, which was really interesting to me. And paired with something I want to talk about when we do our pick of the week coming up, is they seem to really be admitting of not a failure, but a set of decisions that could have been better in the initial rollout, which is really interesting. Just that's out there, and that previously the company seemed to be everything's great. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. We don't make mistakes here. We're good. So it's a different approach. I like it.
Yeah, we manufacture games, not mistakes. Right. But I think the thing that was most interesting to me in there, like the one line that stuck out to me, was that the CEO in the CEO letter where he actually said, we have engaged more with the community, and we plan to continue to engage, in greater ways in the coming year and years to come. That was the most encouraging thing to me because, again, if we take last year as a lesson, they said they were going to do it. They have. We've seen huge steps in their engagement levels. Good. Keep it rolling. I want to see that continue.
Agreed completely. Like I loved how they're like, hey, by the way, next year we're aiming to improve on community engagement.
Yeah.
Like it's fantastic. They're doing the right things right now. So kudos to GW. Obviously for our GW employees who watch the show. So
You never know.
it's possible, unlikely but possible. So this week we also had Khorne jump into the season of war that's ongoing, and which also shows kind of their new engagement with, like, we have this ongoing campaign, and they are being proactive in the events of the campaign and somewhat maybe responsive. I mean, do you think it was scripted this way for Chaos to have this boon? Or do you think that this is like, man, Chaos is really getting whooped, like, let's give them this boon to kind of motivate the conflict?
My personal opinion is they probably had a set of these things ready for whomever they wanted the gods to take a hand of, right? And we'll see more in the weeks to come. Like, I'm sure we're going to see like a Nagash death thing or something, or whatever. That's fine. But what this is so if you've ever been to, for those in the audience who've played Magic, when you go to like a Magic pre-release for a new set now, you get like a card often that you can fill out with like achievements that you unlock during the pre-release, and you get like little bennies and a pin and whatever. It's just stuff, okay? It's just stuff that encourages you to be engaged and participate more than the game itself, okay? Like just the game that you're playing right in front of you, and that's what this is. It's creating a constant engagement connection between them and the community, keeping you talking about the game, thinking about the game, excited about what you could do. It's very much the right answer, because all it costs them is the time of the person to make the stuff, right? And it's got a temporary endpoint they don't need to worry about. If something's a little too crazy, who cares? It blows up in a week, right? It self-terminates. But it does create an amount of interest in there to get people talking about it. And it's fun if you happen to be playing in that army. That's a cool thing for you. So.
No, absolutely. So yeah, check it out if you haven't. Chaos has a new item that they can build with for the next week or so. A neat little extra mortal woundy weapon. So enjoy, Chaos folks.
I'm sure there'll be more coming.
Yes, exactly.
Just real quick, Tom, think about this on a spectrum of GW potential involvement. One scenario in which they release a new version of the game and don't release an army book for 6 months, and one in which they release a new version of the game, constant updates, and now they're doing a campaign, and not only do they lay out the terms of the campaign, but they're interacting on a week-to-week basis, saying, hey, look what's going on, isn't this interesting, now this new event's happening. Your results feed into the story of the narrative. It's on opposite ends of the spectrum of where it was a couple years ago. It's really worth mentioning and highlighting, I think.
Absolutely. Like, we're in a different world of GW involvement. And it's good. I mean, it's fantastic. Like, this is what we've wanted. So it's like they actually want us to play their game. So
What?
not just build and paint models, but actually play games. It's a weird idea. A little bit of fun ribbing. Okay, so Vince, do you want to take this 40K rumor?
Yeah, sure. So this one was rather interesting. It's kind of a strange rumor, but basically the rumor surfaced that in a 40K set coming in 2017, like I'm going to mispronounce this because I don't really know, Ahriman? I don't know who that is, but I assume it's somebody in the 40K world. Ahriman's Unholy Covenant, whatever. The point is that in there, Nkari, N''Kari, will be included in that set, and we'll have an alternate build for a standard Keeper of Secrets. So basically, we're going to get our new Keeper of Secrets through an alt build in this 40K set in some way. And that isn't, as a point of fact, the new Keeper of Secrets that's been rumored and that people have seen a sculpt for and everything for a long time. That it is specifically Nkari, and hence also could be used as a generic KOS. So awesome.
Do you think that it's going to find its way as a solo release, as part of the Slaanesh release, or do you think that this is only for this big box?
Who knows? And the rumor's not enough to say. What I will say is that you could do a whole Slaanesh Demons release and have it be 40K and fantasy, right? Like,
Yeah.
you don't need... There's no reason why that release has to be pinned into Age of Sigmar or 40K. The same force is present in both worlds. You would just put out like a different book that tells the specific story of what's going on with the units in each world. There you go. Done and done.
Which 2017, I mean, that maps to our chaos hypothetical chaos release, right?
Yeah.
Like, we thought this year would be Tzeentch, and then would be Slaanesh.
Yep.
So, I don't know. It might be coming.
Sure. I hope so.
They're going to have to compete with TGG2's Keeper, that's all I'm saying. Okay. So, subscription, for those that are looking for the new White Dwarf that's coming in, the new model that's coming, which, by the way, we didn't talk last week about the content of the new White Dwarf, did we?
No.
Okay. So the new White Dwarf, one of the news items that I saw come out this week that I thought was fascinating is that it's going to be retrospective rather than advertising.
Right.
So the magazine, part of the function of the magazine now is going to be talking about what the releases have been. So the releases are not going to be once a month. They're still going to be on a weekly schedule. But the White Dwarf is then going to come at the end of the month looking back over those releases and aimed more at the hobbyist and the gamer than like it used to be, rather than like advertising for what is being sold right now. I thought that was absolutely, that's an interesting shift in perspective again. From where they previously were. So, and for those that are interested in that, we've gotten a hint as to what the new miniature is that it's going to be included with this magazine. Vince, do you have the picture, or do I just need to talk about it?
I don't have the picture, but it's the Khorne heavy flail guy. I don't remember his name.
It's the nice-looking Khorne hero.
Yes.
The one with the weapon and the big flail.
Yeah, he's holding a sword, and he's holding that big chain, that spiked ball on a chain in his left hand out, and it's got that that weight as it hangs down toward the ground. Really cool looking hero. I apologize, I can't keep every blood, skull, crusher, killer, whatever name straight of the Khorne heroes. That's just how it is. They all sound alike to me. But it's that guy. That's the dude that's going to come with that opening issue of White Dwarf, and so. That thing is going to sell out the day it comes out. Previous to that. Call your game store now. Either subscribe to... If you want that miniature for the price of a White Dwarf magazine, you better be getting on the horn with your local game store right now and saying, hold me a copy of that White Dwarf. Period.
It's true.
The one with the Sigmarine was impossible to get your hands on in lots of places, and that was just a Liberator, right? So it wasn't like a clam pack $30 hero or something. So there you go.
Yeah, I'm excited because this is going to correspond with that Gore Chosen mini game. Yep. So man, if you're ever wanting to get into Khorne, now is the time because that thing's coming out. You can pick up the
White Dwarf,
half starter, the White Dwarf. Man, it's gold. It's all there.
That's how Khorne wins. It's easy to give in to Fury. Just give into it and let the miniatures happen.
I mean, I'll be honest. I'm gonna have a Gore Chosen faction accidentally at this point.
Sure. Yeah.
Which I mean, that's probably okay. So let's see.
Following up on what you just said, though, Tom. A couple things. One, I heard that they're going to be announcing new releases on social media.
Yes.
Which would, I guess, come on Saturday, probably, the moment the pre-order goes up. Which is,
they've already been doing that. Just they're leaking images.
Right, but yeah, they'll have more control over it because they have to send out these magazines in physical copy early in Germany and Spain or wherever they're scanning them, and so they'll have more control over that. You likely won't see pictures until that Saturday. When immediately, that's really reinforcing the impulse buy, which is a huge part. From the sales report, I found out 33% of their sales are things that come out that moment, and then 66 is old stock. So that's really interesting that we won't have images Tuesday morning of models. It'll be Saturdays will be the time.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Look, I don't care
is
as
a
long as they're
sad-
not Thursday, like Thursday morning, because that seems to be when everything leaks now. Basically, as soon as I hit close on this video and we go off the air, that outfloods the pictures of whatever the newest rumor or release is. So fine, if we can move it off a little while, great. I'm okay with it. As long as I don't keep missing the hottest, freshest news by 5 minutes, I'm totally fine with it.
True story, in fact. Okay, so let's see. This week, obviously, it's speaking of leaked out images, the images of the Beastclaw Raider repack release is dropped, and they're fantastic. Vince, do you have any images of this?
Yes, I can bring up images of this. Absolutely.
Because
keep talking,
they
and I will
were
bring it up.
beautifully painted. Like, man, like, I'm not a real big ogre fan, but when I saw some of this, I was like, I could use some ogres. I could put some ogres on my shelf. That shelf right there. There you go.
It does excite me to think of how they're going to repaint the studio army of all the other factions we'll be getting over time. This is a really interesting take, all white. I've never seen any Stonehorns like this or anything like that. It's cool. Everything but the Yetis. I still hate the
Sure.
Yeti. Come on.
They're classic, man, and they're battle line.
Yeah, if you take
They are
something like
battle
that,
line.
right? Yeah.
It's all about look at these.
Oh yeah.
Beautiful.
His faces.
Look at
Ice
that.
weapons.
Yeah, the
Good.
majesty.
At least their ice weapons make sense now if they've got snow bases. They were selling them with brown bases before.
It's
Like,
true.
that doesn't make any sense. They were.
Did they carry these from the north?
Apparently, and just, use them until they melt for like a couple minutes. I don't know. It's ridiculous. That was the least ridiculous thing about them, to be fair. I mean, you saw the sculpt, but
Yeah. Certainly. So I will say that the big news for me is the big army box, the Icewind Assault, which Vince is bringing up now. Just because these things are generally such a good deal. And in here you're going to get a Stonehorn, but it looks like a Stonehorn and a...
yeah, you get 2 of the monsters, the Stonehorn Thunder,
Yep.
right? You get 4 Mournfang, you get 3 Yetis, and you get like the Hunter guy and 4 kitty cats.
And the
Yep.
MSRP of all those models after the repack, because Mournfang are now 4 to a box for $65. So after before the repack, it would have been $330, I think, something like that, and it's sold for $215, and you can get it online for $175, probably 20% off. So it's a good deal.
Yeah, it really is. And it looks really good in white, like, I have to be honest.
It's awesome. I heard it was 1,400 points too. But I didn't corroborate that. I just heard that online.
That's a nice 1,500 in a box.
Yeah.
So, or almost 1,500. No.
And that's right in my sweet spot right there. 1,500 points. Good.
Yeah, we could talk about that at some point.
Oh, we're going
to.
to.
I'd be interested. Yeah, we can talk about the whole point situation later.
The point situation. Yes. Welcome to the point situation room.
We just lost 10 viewers.
I'm Wolf Blitzer. Yeah. All right. So,
okay.
Yeah, these guys, I will say, this is the best these miniatures have ever looked. As I've commented many times and will continue to talk about, it's the monsters look good, the kitty cats look good, the Mournfang look good, the ogres still look stupid. Sorry, I've never liked the ogres. I don't like the fat boy ogres, not this current model. Sorry.
If they're not wearing clothing, Vince, they have to stay warm.
Hashtag not my ogres, okay? Bring me back Golfag's man-eaters. That's all I'm saying. Those are my ogres.
I've got a couple of versions of those.
Yeah. Them's the boys right there. All right.
Okay. Tyler alerted a friend of the show alerted us of an AOS tourney dropping in Missouri in about a month, and we'll have the information for that. It'll be a 1,000-point match play tournament, a fairly cheap entry, and we will. All games are going to be played on 4x4 tables, and we'll have the information to that in the comments below for those that are interested in the kind of the Midwest region that would like to throw down. Yep.
Excellent. Good stuff. Yeah, no, Tyler is obviously a great dude and a friend of the show himself, and we're excited that he's got a tournament going, so it should be pretty sweet. And of course, I think we're going to segue from this right in. We're going to segue right into our Ninth Age news, right?
Yes. Vince,
right.
Do you want to take this the first item?
I would. I'm trying to make my camera work again. Because there we go. There I am. I'm back. Yay. We're not sharing your picture. That's what happens. Okay. So yeah, let's jump into some Ninth Age news. So first up, Tabletop Miniature Solutions. So obviously they're well known for having they ran an Indiegogo campaign around some really cool bases. For our Ninth Age folks, or just for people who like square bases, as a matter of fact, if you're not round basing everything. And it was a great campaign. They had some really cool bases. They are also running an Indiegogo for their first full army, which will be for their Undying Dynasties army. So for their basically... it's, Tomb Kings, right? I mean, that's what it is. And so it's the full Ninth Age range, all the classics back again. That campaign kicks off tomorrow. So, and it is, I was talking to them, I took a look at the project. There's a lot of really amazing stuff that they have planned depending on, how far they reach into their stretch goals. They were really good about the way they delivered on the first one, so I see no reason to think any other thing is going to happen here. So I think that's pretty cool for those who want to get their Tomb Kings or Undying Dynasties or Undying Legions, I think, in Kings of War figs. You in whatever army, hey, now you've got another range of sweet Egyptian undead to pick from. So there you go, pretty exciting stuff. That's pretty awesome. Do you want me to just take all three of these, Tom?
Sure.
All right. So also there's a really nice update, or I guess all two of these. Sorry. There's a really nice update about the future development of the rules, and I will include the link down below in the description. For basically, they planned out their release schedule into next year for the Ninth Age. Talked about when they're going to do sort of point updates, their 1 point, X, whatever that happens to be. And throughout the whole process, they're going to be running surveys that what they're aiming at here is targeted surveys for people to talk about what they think defines their army. And I would really highly encourage everybody who's interested in the Ninth Age to go give it a read, because it's very, very on point for what's so hyper important to me about the armies in a game like Ninth Age, is that they each have to have a distinct character. And so what they talk about is they want to help refocus these armies into having the character that people see them as, that they should have. For example, your Kingdom of Equitaine, your Bretonnia successors, right? Your theory is these chivalrous knights, right? That's what sums up the army, or something like that. That's how you see it. So it should be mostly cavalry, it should be mostly speed, it should win on the charge, however you want to define it. So they're going to be doing surveys about out to the players of both what is maybe too good or not good enough, so some power correction, but also about just helping to define the theme and building up the capabilities of the units they're in. So super cool. Check it out. Link will be down below once the show is posted. So there you go. That's our Ninth Age news.
That's our news.
Oh, and of course the big ETC tournament. I'm sorry, that's also coming up. I knew there was a third one. I just couldn't remember it. Big ETC tournament coming up. You can also find out about that on the site. So same link. There you go. All right. So with that out of the way, shall we turn, gentlemen, to our pick of the week? How about that? So Jeff, I know you've got one hot and ready. What's your pick of the week here? Tell us about it.
Yeah, so I sent you a link via email that you might use in the show notes so people could go to it if they're interested. So Jarvis Johnson did an interview with a podcast called Forge the Narrative. It's a podcast I don't often listen to. In fact, I probably only listened to like one of them since they started recording. But I saw it on Bella Lost Souls today. You guys probably saw it too. And it's about 30 minutes. He talks about the new 40K Flyer game for the first half, but at minute 16 he starts talking about the General's Handbook, which we're going to talk about tonight. And I thought it was a fairly candid interview, and it's a window into Jarvis Johnson's conception of what the game Age of Sigmar is and what really everything Games Workshop produces is. And it's helpful, I think, to get a sense of the way in which they're thinking about what we're doing on the table, the way in which they think Jarvis Johnson and the design team thinks that we're basically like, and Hammer's talked about this a little bit too, from his conversation with him. We're like directors in a movie, and then we set the scene, and then take the embody the general and fight it out, and use tactical brilliance if we can to win games. But the most important part to his mind is creating that scene, creating that movie, which is a really interesting way to think about wargaming, and it makes me think about what it is I like most about the hobby, and what brings me back for more every week. So it might be worth a listen, and with a question about what it is that makes you interested in the hobby, and do you agree? Is this the same thing that you want to achieve? Because it might not be the same thing. Like Jarvis Johnson's idea of what this game is might be wildly different from, I don't know, Fantasy Flight's sense of what X-Wing is, or what the people who run Magic think Magic is. So it's these are all games, but they're different types of games, and Jarvis isn't saying this is the only way that you have to play, or this is the only thing it could be, but I don't know. It's worth thinking through what the lead designer thinks is happening when a Warhammer game is taking place.
Very cool. I will definitely check that out. I love like behind the scenes sort of interviews where you get the direct thought of sort of what the designers of the games were directly thinking. It's funny because the most recent episode of my RPG podcast I do was all about, shameless self-promotion, was all about sort of behind the scenes boxes in games. Like when you're reading a book, an RPG or a wargame or anything, and there's like a cutout to the side that's the designer of the game directly talking to you. Right, not giving you rules, not giving you fluff, but directly engage. They use the term like, when you are doing this, this is how we thought about it. This is maybe how you want to think about it. Whatever. I always find those things to be the most revealing and interesting parts of the book. So I'm super excited about that. Very cool.
The other big takeaway from it was that I think Jarvis Johnson basically came out and said we made some mistakes with the game, similar to what you read in the financial report. But he said that this book that we're about to talk about is just a manifestation of what he had intended with the original game, and that he thought that he was basically supplying a sandbox in which we could play however we liked, but he recognizes now that people wanted some examples. So the 3 ways to play, people think that like, yeah, they just put points in the game and the other 2 are just kind of throw-ins. They really do think like, here are 3 possible ways to play that we have considered, and use any of them, take bits and pieces from all different parts of the book, mix it together, make it your own, make your own rules, and they really mean that. And it comes across when he gives this interview and speaks to that subject in particular.
Yeah, and that gets reinforced throughout the book. Like it's from page 1 all the way through to the end. There's all these things of like, you could just use this, or you feel free to change this, or if you don't like this, whatever. Like it just over and over and over again. You see very direct. Like it's funny to me because the main conversation has actually tilted to talking about points and stuff like that, and that's fine. I get it because it's also the newest thing that wasn't there before. So of course it's going to generate a lot of interest. But it's funny to me that everybody's like, or if somebody's like, there's these things, and we've got to play by these rules now. And it's like, no, they literally printed in there, you do not have to do this stuff. But people, we read what we want to read, right? And that's what it boils down to. Yeah. All right, Tommy, what do you got for a pick of the week, buddy?
I'm gonna be kind of boring. MC1 Gamer did, not that MC1 Gamer is boring, But him, and our lead anchor here, Vince, and Merrick, and jumped in this last weekend and did a discussion, a discussion, the Forge World points for matched play, and it's kind of a companion to this show. I want to encourage you guys to check it out, and it's a nice 4-hour rundown of those points if you guys need to fill some airtime.
Yeah, should we? I feel like I should link that video at like hour 2 and 20 when we actually started talking about like the Monstrous Arcanum points or something, because we really dawdled a bit there. It is a true paint-episode, and it's not as focused as like today we're going to talk about this. We ramble over a lot of subjects, but yes.
That doesn't sound like Mitch.
What? It's, yeah. What I'll say is summation on the Monstrous Arcana points, they're high. There you go. That's what I think about that.
You're saying that the Monstrous Arcana points are high?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't think that about the Chaos Dwarves though.
No, I don't think that about the Chaos Dwarves. The Monstrous Arcana, the monsters points.
Yeah.
Monstrous Arcana, not Tamurican or whatever, however you say his name, not the Chaos Dwarves, the monsters. Your
I don't know, the Squig Gobbler seems about right.
No, at 60 points he's way off. Yeah, he's too high. He should have been like 30.
Yeah, that's true. He's pretty terrible.
If you ever watched Wall Street, you know the scene where Charlie Sheen walks in on Michael Douglas and he's like, at 40, it was a conversation. At 50, it's an insult, and he like slams the phone down. That's what I want to be like with that Squig Gob. I'm like, at 40, maybe. At 60, get out of here. You're out. All right. Anyways, that's not what we're talking about today. Okay.
Hey, it'll at least look imposing on the table. That's 60 points of attention grabbing. Your opponent's going to see that and be like, man, that thing's on like an 80 mil round or 100 mil round. I'm going after that thing.
Sure.
Okay. Saying.
Sure. Well, my pick of the week will also involve me, but that's not intentional. I'm actually going to attract everyone or point everyone toward Star Mini Gaming and Paul Conti. So James and Paul have a show called Tactica Tuesdays, and their most recent episode they released, I took part in, and we were discussing tempo, which is I think something that's not often thought about in terms of war games, but I think it's something very important. In the world of Magic players, like, whoa, tempo is a big deal, huge deal. So we kind of talk about that and those sorts of things. But it was a lot of fun. And also, James decided to spring a little mini episode of War Games on us, wherein Paul and myself, argued over 2 units, sort of a rematch of when Paul was still smarting over his fight with Tom, between the Soul Grinder and the Phoenix and the Terrorgeist.
Spoiler alert, if you haven't seen that episode
of War Games. Yes, Tom did win that round. And, well, sadly, Paul is now 0 for 2, as he was not victorious in this.
Wait a minute. 0 for 3, because I played Triumph and Treachery with him over the weekend, and he came in last. So.
Sorry, Paul. Paul.
No, we had a great time, though, and he was a great sport, and it was just wacky fun. But, yeah, 0 for 3. Yeah.
I mean, it's Triumph and Treachery. Like, I don't think there's any great tactical like acumen not being proven by losing a game of Triumph and Treachery.
Turn 2, I said we're all losers playing this game, guys. Come on, no one's coming out of this on top.
Exactly. No, it was a fun episode. Check out Tactica Tuesdays. I'll link the episode there down below. Paul and James are doing really great stuff. If you're interested in the very tactical side of the game, they have their finger on the pulse. They're both very deep and interesting thinkers about it and present you with a lot of fun, different ways to play your game. So check it out. All right. So with that, let's turn to some hobby time. So, Jeff, you sent me some pictures. I'm loath to show them, being that my camera wants to stop working right now whenever I go off of it. So but I will do it for you, buddy, because I really want to show off the cards. That's what it is. And I want you to talk about both as we get into it. So I'm going to lock on me and share up here, and then we'll get into it.
Cool.
All right. All right, so let's start on this bad boy here.
Oh, yeah, so first we can just flip through those real quick. It's just what I've been up to. I've been painting some a Chaos Warrior that I converted up for my Nurgle Age of Sigmar army. So
is
yes,
that coming from the Vikings?
Yeah, the little thing is taken, but the rest of the kit's from the regular Chaos Warrior. I'm trying to make those very two-dimensional models look less static, and
it's so difficult.
It is, but I don't know, when I put my entire 10-man unit down when it's done in 7 years, I think it'll look really much more dynamic than I thought it could be when I started converting them up. So a little bit of movement here or there.
I actually, ironically enough, am also doing that with my Nurgle Chaos Warriors, and I'm also pulling weapons and conversion bits from my Blade Kings. So that's why I recognize that was because I'm also like cutting and trying to move them out of this two-dimensional space.
Yep, because they really wanted to rank up back in 8th edition, and so trying to make something happen there. But but anyhow, yeah, that's just a couple quick picks of model I was working on. But the thing that you talked about a moment ago, Vince, was TNT. So I alluded to the game that I played with Paul. I played with him and my buddy Greg and Peyton and three of our other friends over the last weekend. We had a great time playing some Age of Sigmar TNT. So I modified the rules of the game to make it more like 8th edition Triumph and Treachery, which was my favorite way to play 8th Ed once that expansion came out a few years ago. And so I printed up these cards. It's amazing what you can do in the year 2016. I wrote some cards up one day and then printed them off at Staples, cut them out, and then slid them into some card sleeves, and then I used Warhammer Invasion cards on the backings to give a little bit more, some design and some art to it, but also a little bit more structure to the integrity to the cards themselves. So I wrote I think it was 42 of them, and then I also wrote some magic items, one for each player that would be randomly shuffled in, and we had a good time with it. I modified the rules slightly to make the card mechanic work, and also I changed some rules for how combats work, because in the TNT that you can read straight out of the book, you basically fight combat even if you're in no way involved in the turn, and so I talked to some of my friends and we didn't want to do it that way, so we decided to do it differently. But overall, it was pretty much mashing together 8th edition TNT with what you get in the General's Handbook and arriving right in the middle. I'd probably make a couple slight tweaks next time I play it. I already wanted to change the wording on the cards themselves as to when you could actually play those cards. But I posted up in the TGA, the Grand Alliance forum, and I sent you the link, Vince, if you want to put that in the show notes too, that will give more info, and it's got an attachment with all the cards. So if anyone wants to print them off themselves and use them, more power to you. Change them, use some of them, throw out others, do whatever you like. But it was just a cool opportunity to try out, the new General's Handbook, AOS, Triumph and Treachery rules, and also be creative and do my own kind of hobby thing. And it was an opportunity to waste some money on beads at Michael's that you can see in the next picture that I sent you to. I spent way too much money on those. Don't tell my girlfriend. But they look cool. So brass tokens 50, silver for 100, and quantum gemeralds for 500, I guess. But everyone gets their own little pouch too for a little pay chest. It was cool. I went all out on that. I was really excited about it.
You really did, buddy. I love everything about this, man. Holy crap. This is so great. I as well played a game of Triumph and Treachery multiplayer over the weekend. Most of my games will probably end up being with that. I agree with you pretty much down the line on everything you just said. And so I am very, very excited to rip these cards out and give them a spin. Because we just played it more straight out of the book, which was still fantastic. But this definitely adds an extra dimension to the game, no doubt about it. Very
The
cool.
bribing mechanic is so integral to the game. That's the thing I loved about it, and the cards and trading cards for money, and that's lost in the simplified version in the new book. So
Right.
bringing that back in is cool.
Absolutely. No, this is awesome. Super fantastic. So, like Jeff said, I'll throw the link down below where you can go get the file that has the cards themselves in it. So if you want to add some spice, make your own Triumph and Treachery games a little more caliente, then you can do so. There you go. All right. Super awesome, man. That's great stuff.
Thanks.
Like, that is some great hobby time, I have to say. I'm all about it. All right, Tommy, what do you got, buddy?
Nothing. I literally have not picked up a paintbrush since last week. I've just been busy, and I've been out and like getting this weird thing called exercise.
No, you haven't. You've been out catching Pokemon. Don't be a liar.
Which may or may not involve chasing down digital creatures. But
Okay, while you guys talk about this, I'll be back in one moment.
Sure, you go ahead. Yeah, like,
but
you just randomly started exercising the same week that Pokemon Go came out. Well, that's just such a strange coincidence. You and half of America.
So unusual.
Yeah.
Yes. Hey, I'm running like 3.1 miles every morning now. Like, I'm in. I'm down.
Great.
But I'm tired. And so like I'm getting up now at like 6 to run. And so because I'm getting up too early to run, like my evenings, which was my paint time, like I get to the evening and I'm like, nope, bedtime. So I have not been painting at all this last week, which is a problem considering I have a bunch of projects piling up, and I have a tournament coming in a couple months of an entire force that needs to be painted.
Yeah, you
do. Yeah, I do. So I was sitting down here, and I was doing a little bit of cutting on some bits that I just got in from one of my eBay sites, and maybe I'll put a paintbrush to a model tonight. That might just happen.
You know, you could always run at night and still sleep into a later time. You can run any time of day. You don't have to get up at 6 a.m.
The Arboretum's not open at night.
Where you need to go catch your Pokemon. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, where the Dratini happened to spawn.
Good God Almighty! I don't even know what to do with you. All right.
Hey, so, I have a 2,200-point dragon. That's all I'm saying.
I don't know what that means, but it's probably good. Congratulations, I guess. Okay. So, my hobby time has not been spent chasing any form of digital creature. In fact, so obviously I've been working a lot on Sylvaneth. I threw up some of those images. Got 20 out of my 30 Dryads done. I'm forcing myself to do those mostly first. There was a slight sort of left turn into the Kurnoth Hunters since I needed a small box I could take down to Tom's last weekend for the marathon. But beyond that, I've more or less focused up completely on the Dryads. But before I can finish with Sylvaneth, I had a couple more projects I realized I needed to get done for the Gen Con miniature painting competition. So this is what I'm almost have done right now. So this is you'll recognize her as one of the TGG2 minis. This is like the Harpy Queen or whatever. And so she's going to be entered into the Rainbow Brush, wherein the challenge is to use all 7 colors of the rainbow in one miniature. So there you go.
Cool.
Yeah, pretty fun. It is a real challenge. That is not a joke. Like trying to balance and actually efficiently correctly use 7 colors on a miniature, like, yeah, it's not easy. Not that I'm some great genius. I don't know if I succeeded or failed. I'm just saying it really had to think hard about even hitting mediocre. That's what I'm saying. So she was fun. I'm just waiting on her base to dry. She's going to be on a little harpy roost. There you go. It looks right now like kind of a melted snowman. That's what it looks like. I just realized as I was looking at it, like his little sad stick arms. Won't look like that later. Okay, and then I'm also going to do a little chibi miniature for competition. This is Nibbles from Arcadia Quest, who is super fun. He's a very angry little bunny wabbit. So he'll be done before I leave for Gen Con next week.
Pink? Are you going pink?
He'll have like pink, purple, non-metallic metal armor type of style. So, and his ears. I mean, it's all cartoony, right? So you have to use bright colors. That's the advantage of painting chibi. You can use super bright colors, and it looks appropriate. So, because it's cartoony. And then back to Sylvaneth. Back to trees and trees and trees as far as the eye can see. And yeah, so there'll be a lot more hobby cheating coming around the Sylvaneth. Not least of which is because I'm working on it, but also because I think that a lot of other people are probably working on it, and so there'll be some good tutorials coming out around that as well. So there you go.
I saw your Sylvaneth on Twitter today. It looks really good.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yes, you can follow me at Warhammer Weekly. There you go. If you want to see whenever I do models or share other people's models or talk about random nonsense, there you go. That's what you can. That's the high quality you get from following at Warhammer Weekly. So there you go. I promise you nothing if not mediocrity across all media platforms. That's what I'm really aiming at. Just right down the middle, no matter where you happen to be engaging with me, just sea level. Okay, so gentlemen, shall we turn to our feature segment tonight, which is, as we've all done, we've held up the book like 20 times. Let's do it again, right over my face. General's Handbook.
I want another 5 minutes on Pokemon.
No.
Okay.
All right, so let's not that I have a problem with it. It's fine if you're playing Pokemon and it's getting you out and walking around. Awesome, super great stuff. There you go. Okay, so like what you like. Let's start with our high level. Let's start with just a high level kind of feeling about it. We've all had the book now for a week or whatever, right? Or less than a week. We've all had it for some number of days, and we've probably all hurriedly consumed it. So, high level, what do you think about it? Jeff, kick us off. What are your initial impressions?
Well, I am struck by a number of things. I really like the way that the design team is speaking directly to the players at the start of each of these sections. They say, like, introducing narrative play, introducing open play. And I think they really took seriously the opportunity to express a way of playing the game, from their perspective. This is what we think you can accomplish with this. This is the sort of fun that we think you could have with this type of game. Here are all the opportunities that you can take advantage of here using this book as a guide. I especially like the way they introduced matched play and the way that they introduced tournaments. They speak directly to what a tournament is. They try to disabuse people of the fear that tournaments are scary and the people will be nasty. That was only the case like half the time in 8th edition. No, only in the Northeast where there were ETC players. But no, most of the people at tournaments are awesome and always have been. But they really go out of their way to say, like, hey, this is a lot of fun. You should try this. You'll meet new people. You'll make some great friends. And they basically say, they even go as far as to say, like, hey, you should have like a little kit of things you bring to tournaments, like your dice and tape measure and like a notebook. And when have they ever explicitly acknowledged the tournament scene as existing since they stopped doing their own tournaments? I mean, it's totally different from the way they were treating that sort of thing 5 years ago. So yeah, my 20,000 foot overview of it is really impressed with the presentation. I think that they recognized a few months into AOS that they needed to do something because people were freaking the F out of the game. And I honestly think it was people like Heelan Hammer and Russ Beal at Facehammer and Ben Curry in their podcast who basically pleaded for this and said, you need to do something because I can't have a pickup game with strangers without it being awkward, and you got to fix it. And initially when this was rumored, I was thinking, they had this in the works the entire time, but the more I think about it, and then after listening to Jarvis Johnson's interview and reading this most recent financial report, I think that this was cooked up about probably 8 months ago it started, maybe 9. And so right after the initial launch, once they realized like what was happening and how people were reacting to it, and so far I've seen such a great response in the community. Stores are stocking the product again. People on Bell of Lost Souls are only really mean and not incredibly mean. So it's happening. Things are changing here, and I think this book's going to be the start of it.
September, late August, early September was when we first heard the rumor that points were coming. Like, I don't know if you guys remember that or not, but like it was after the convention scene in August at the end where they said they spoke to people at one of the booths and they said coming down from on high, points are coming. So that matched your timeline fairly closely.
Yeah, at the time I thought that was just, a rumor that, yeah, in the same way that, yeah, they're going to make movement trays, and they'll put the round bases in movement, that was happening at the same time too. So I didn't believe it, but probably that's what was happening.
All right. Tommy, what about you, sir? What are your high-level impressions?
I like it. I wish at times there was just more in it. Like, it's a fairly small book, all things considered, right? Like,
well, I mean, 280 pages or so, right?
Yeah, but like
Or
the
170.
well, yeah, it's 170, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like those compendiums, like the Faction Grand Alliance books, some of them are pushing 300 pages. Like, it just seems to me there was a lot more design space that was left on the floor. And I can understand like they're minimal, like they're wanting to like minimally engage and have room to expand later, and like I get all that. But I just like I found myself reading each chapter wanting to go like, well, like give me some stuff, like some of the meat. Like they gave a couple sample scenarios and stuff like that for match play and for multiplayer and stuff like that, but I don't know. I just wish there was a little bit more. And we just, like, if they had done some type of sample, like a 20-page sample campaign for a narrative campaign. Or something like that. Like, I wanted more details with some of this stuff. That was my impression. But that said, like, I love everything that's there. I loved it so much I wanted more.
So you wanted basically like this book combined with like a Blood in the Badlands. Here's us fighting out the campaign, like a big white dwarf type thing in the middle. That would have been interesting.
Maybe, or yes, like give us a narrative framework. Like here's an idea. Why didn't they have a 20 to 40 page insert of a sample one, Season of War? And all of the data that we've had parsed out for the Season of War campaign could have been a sample narrative play laid out in kind of an organized narrative fashion with like the details of the region and the cities and all of that stuff that we've received in other stuff could have been a subsection of that narrative play.
Well, I'll let you talk, Vince. I've got thoughts on Tom's comments.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, to be fair, they do have a matrix campaign in there with like battles that go from A to B to C to D to E, right? Where you have this progression along a narrative of various battles, and they give you the scenarios for each step in the chain. I don't completely disagree with you either. Like, for me, they give a lot of samples. There's a couple things I would have liked to see. Like, man, I wish I would have got another 1 or 2 pages on that. The map campaign is the big example of that, right? Like, they kind of give you the way to run a map campaign and some sample boons and bennies and stuff. But I would have loved to see another 2 pages on that of just like some more random charts for boons and bennies and then a big map. And like they have a map in there, but even maybe more, with more stuff, more concrete, more examples. So I'm not completely against your position. I agree. I liked it so much. What I really just want is more of it. So I think what I would really love if I had my druthers was continue to expand this stuff through all platforms, right? Like, give me more online on your Facebook page, put out some more map stuff, put out some more ladder stuff, some more matrix stuff, some more scenarios, whatever. And keep putting it in books too. Like, I'm fine. I'll if you keep making good books, guess what? I'll buy them. Put stuff that's worth it in there. I'll buy the book, right? So I think that they did lay a lot of groundwork here, but you're right that in many of the cases we did get ideas and starting points, not the whole thing, right? And I think if that's what you're putting your finger on, I agree with you. So Jeff, go ahead.
Yeah, you're basically making my point. I think that in the same way that the 4-page core rules for AOS are a skeleton upon which you could hang lots of different complexity, and new rules. I think that's the same thing that's happening here with the General's Handbook. They're giving you a sense of what each of these types of games might be, and then in subsequent publications they will flesh out, for example, a narrative arc in whatever the next thing after the Realm Gate Wars is. And so, if you want like a map-based campaign, well, you've got maps there. They put those really awesome maps in all of those books, and you could fight over X, Y, and Z city, and you could recreate the battles from the narrative play, using their time of war and using their scenarios. So I think of this book as the thing that I want to carry with me whenever I'm playing a game of AOS. And then, if over time we'll get more stuff, and if I want to play a particular scenario or a particular narrative campaign, I could bring an additional book that they release on top of this. But this will be the constant in my bag that I have for those 6 match play scenarios, and then anything fun that I want to do with my friends, one-off open play games and stuff like that.
Yep. No, I think that's a good way to think about it. All right, so let's get into some nitty-gritty, shall we, gentlemen? Let's deep dive. All right, we're going to start right at the front. Now, obviously, the book begins with open play, and to me, the big thing that we got in the open play section, I mean, obviously, most of open play is just what we've had forever, but there's a new big fun thing right at the beginning, and what is that? Bada boom! Multiplayer games, right? We were talking about Triumph and Treachery. We both engaged in some Triumph and or Treachery over the weekend. So, Jeff, start us off. What's your feelings on what you got here for multiplayer games? Because you get the rules and you get 6 scenarios for multiplayer games.
Yeah, you really get 2 different types that they're laying out. First of all, open play, you could just play straight up 4-page AOS rules if you want to, but if you want something a little bit more for more people, you could do Coalition of Death or Triumph and Treachery. In Coalition of Death, you've got like 2 teams that are fighting. And you have like a warlord that is the leader of each team who makes ultimate decisions about dice rolls and things like that, and turn priority stuff. In TNT, it's a Royal Rumble type, King of the Hill type game, and so I like it. I like that it's simple. You can read the entire add-on rule in 1 page, and then 1-page battle plan. The cool thing about this is I could hand this book to someone who's never seen it before and say, "We're doing this. You have to read 2 pages." And we can go. So it's nothing complicated, but there's a lot of diversity to the way that you could play based on this. So I liked it. I like the way that the Coalition of Death works. I thought the scenarios were really cool. I'm excited especially about the King of the Hill game, where it's basically like 3 people ganging up on 1 player, and you just keep track of how many models you kill as the defending player, and it's assumed you're going to lose, but you want to get closer to killing them, and you play it in a series. They haven't really done much of that before, where you have like a series of games back and forth and you keep track. I thought that was a pretty cool mechanic.
Which did you use one of the 6 scenarios for your TNT game?
So I did a modified version of the Artifact of Ultimate Power, which is basically something they ripped out of the old Triumph and Treachery game. But so I did a slightly modified version of it, but essentially it was the Artifact of Power.
Gotcha.
And it was a lot of fun.
Here's what I love about that. So we did a modified version of Field of Blood, and I think there you find the key, right? Like the point is that you don't have to take these things verbatim. Like before the game, there were 3 of us playing. We sat down, we read the rules, and we were like, okay, well, there's a couple restrictions on like your army construction in Field of Blood. Like you can't have more than 1 model with more than 10 wounds, and you can't have more than 6 units. And we all talked, and we were like, well, we all have more than 1 thing that has more than 10 wounds that we want to play with, and we all have 7 units. Are we okay with still playing with basically 2 and 7 units? And everybody was like, yep, great, next, go. And we went, and it was fine. I mean, the scenario played perfectly legit because we all actually had the same stuff. Like when we totaled it up, we were like, oh, we all have 7 units and two big things. Huh. Cool. Just like, there you go. Let's just roll with that then. So I think it's a good point that you just because you can use these as a good starting point, and it played rather straight. I mean, like it was fun, and it was very Triumph and treacherous. All right. Yeah, I don't want to cut you off, Jeff, because I know you're still in your thoughts on multiplayer. Anything else you thought about it?
Just really quickly, that my buddy Peyton said like, oh, that would be cool if you have to end your movement on the artifact to pick it up, which isn't how it's written in the rules. But the thing that's striking me is that now that we've had a year without any parental supervision in this game, if we had picked up the TNT book in 8th edition, I said, I want to modify the scenario, my buddies would all have been like, no, we'll just play the scenario they gave us. Like, who are you to change it? But since there were no rules for so long, now it's like, yeah, well, of course we have to change it ourselves, which I think is really something that really excites, the design team at GW, that we don't think twice about changing things now.
Right. Not that we have to. It's that it's fun to. Like, there you go. And why not? All right, Tommy, what about your thoughts on the multiplayer rules within here?
I have only given them a look over. I haven't gotten any multiplayer games in. I like what I see. I need some experience with it.
Sure.
That's all in the short of it.
Fair enough. I very much like the 6 scenarios that are in here, with 2 funny little exceptions. So there's 2 funny things that I really like. All 6 of them. I like the rules for the Coalition and the Triumph of Treachery. There are 2 funny things that I caught when I was reading it. So on these last 2 scenarios, Might is Right and the Tower of Screaming Death, can you see the way that the board is set up?
Yeah.
It's like this weird 7 square thing, right? And I'm like, I don't know how I play that. Like, I don't have a board that shape. I mean, we could obviously just draw it out and create the edges of the board, but like if these were to be 12 by 12s, right? Then that means something here needs to be 36 inches, like across at least, and like I'm cutting. You could certainly cut it out of the center of your table. It's just a weird thing to make out of the middle of your table. So I thought that was funny, but at the same time, I thought it was also interesting to play with unique board shapes. It's definitely the kind of thing where if they sell the Realm of Battle squares in like different individually, where I can just build my own little configuration of magical, Realm of Battle squares, it's playing into that pretty strongly.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to always make it the same size thing. You could play on different shaped battlefields. I await the days of strange Tetris blocks where we're all just waiting on the 4, the straight line. The other thing I thought was funny is if you play the Tower of Screaming Death, which is the last one, you may want to append or amend the victory conditions, because they actually don't work as printed. So I thought this was a funny misprint. The battle continues until only one player has any models on the battlefield, okay, fine, or in the tower. Well, the whole rest of the scenario talks about how only one person can be in the tower at any given point in time, and you can basically boot the other people out once you kill them out of the tower. So, like, you can just take over the tower right away. I don't think they mean to let you win the game because you accidentally moved in. That should say, that shouldn't be phrased like that. Like, it should probably be or controls the tower, like, at the end of a full battle round.
They could have just said on the battlefield, because the tower is on the battlefield, so I don't know what they... Yeah.
It makes it sound like I understand what they're aiming at. What they mean is like nobody's left anywhere is what they're saying. But it makes it sound like they're saying, once you control the tower alone, you win. That's how you initially read it. That's wrong, but that's how you initially read it, right? So it sounds like great. All I have to do is walk into the tower and win. Not in fact correct. Like the wording works but is wrong. So there you go. Or maybe it's doesn't work, but it's right. I don't know. Either way, it's confusing.
Feels so wrong, it can't be right. I get it.
There you go. Overall, fun stuff. And ultimately, the other thing I'd say about all the multiplayer stuff is that there's no reason. We talked about the modularity, and we're going to talk about other elements later as we move through the book. But we ended up picking stuff from the match play stuff and used it in our multiplayer game, right? We said, all right, let's use points, and let's use these rules of 1, and so on and so forth, right? So we pulled some of that in. There's no reason you can't pick and choose that stuff as you like and bring it in to combine and make, like, technically multiplayer is sitting under open play. Who cares, right? It was just easier at the start of the game when I said, let's do this, and they were like, my buddies were like, well, do you want to use points? And we were like, yeah, sure, let's give it a shot. Let's just try everything, right? Because it's all new stuff. And we did, and it was fine. So there you go. you know. Um, just
Go
build
have
your own.
fun.
Yeah, just build your own game of what's fun. There you go.
Mhm.
All right. Narrative play scenarios. So, there's a couple different things I wanted to talk about with this. Obviously, moving out of open play, we get into the narrative play scenarios, and there are some callbacks to some classics in here, both in the scenarios for how we've seen them previously, right? Because we've seen some of these scenarios before, like Hold or Die and the War of Storms, where the Stormfront moves up and down the table, right? So we see a lot of these same things come back, which is great. I like having them in there. But I thought what was really interesting is the recreating battles of the past, where then they get you into like the show you how to recreate these big, massive battles. On these different scenarios. Like, for example, ultimately, of course, this all ends in the giant battle of Nagash versus Archaon. So, which contains, I haven't totaled it yet, but just one of the forces on Archaon's side, like Archaon's Force A, okay? His primary Force A out of 5,
the Vanguard unit.
the Vanguard unit, is $1,000 of models.
Yeah.
It's just 20. Is it 27 Vanguard? Is that what it is?
24 Vanguard, a Gaunt Summoner, and Archaon, which is almost $1,000 exactly. So there you go. I thought that was pretty funny. People playing this scenario, I foresee a lot of Chaos Knights standing in as Vanguard. Let me just say that. I'm going to go ahead and select the dime a dozen Chaos Knights, and you call them Vanguard. Anyway, Jeff, what did you think of the scenario stuff within the narrative play, whether it be some of the reprints of the more narrative-based ones, the recreating the past battles, all that kind of stuff?
I liked it for the same reason that I laid out at the outset. That they're just giving you more and more different ways to play and different types of games that you could play, and changing battlefield conditions and trying to spark your own creativity. I don't play a huge amount of narrative games. I've only actually played a handful since AOS came out. I would like to play more in the future, and I'd love to play a few out of the book. But the one that I'm most excited about is the Raging Fury game, where you play, one player has a single monster. Whenever I finish painting that stupid Great Unclean one that I've been working on since 2 times ago that I was on the show back in October of last year.
Yep.
Yeah, still working on it. Once I finish it, I want to play that one badly. And so essentially you just got one monster versus lots of units that keep coming onto the board for the opposing player, and the monster just tries to survive as long as it can and teleport out of the battlefield if it can do that. And I just think it's such a cool idea. You play it on a small board. It's only 4x4, and you just get some extra rules as the monster, and it's like, come at me. let's do this thing.
Come at me, bro.
That's really cool. Exactly. Yeah, it's really, really fun. And so a cool mechanic there is that the bravery of the guys who are trying to slay the monster, the bravery goes down each time I think a new unit comes on the board, which is as the game progresses. So essentially it's as the beast fails to be taken down, as the army fails to kill the beast, the people get more and more scared, that didn't go well for the first couple units, so not looking great for us. You just have to do 1 wound and then they're out. So it's really cool.
Yeah, I love that scenario. It's so fantastic. Such a cool idea. For these things don't all need to be something you do every time, right?
No.
What I like about it is it's hey, here's a neat change of pace. Kind of keeps everything fresh. You can mix it up, do something different. One of my favorite Mordheim scenarios were the ones that involved big monsters. Yeah, Don't Wake Daddy, exactly. And then not Treasure Hunt. Maybe it was Treasure Hunt. The one where there's a big monster, like a young chimera or a dragon or whatever, guarding a big pile of treasure, right? Where the monster could win that game of Mordheim. Right?
Yeah.
No players at this table might end up being victorious. So I always thought that was super cool, and I love to see that kind of thematic idea come back. In line with that, we had a fun comment from Standard Left who said he would love to see a Mordheim-style after-battle table, a cruel and brutal list that had some fun randomness to defeated units that aren't just buffs. So kind of the inversion of the victory tables, right? Where when you win, you get certain buffs. Like at the same time, have an injury table where some units can get worse or take casualties or heroes can get screwed up. And as most of the viewers know, Tom and I wrote a quick beta edition of Mordheim on the AOS platform, still out there, and I am all behind that. 100% behind that. Let's see some missing eyes, some sucking chest wounds, some mental deficiencies. Absolutely. Like getting conked on the brain. I'm all about it. So, yeah. All right, Tommy, what do you think about this section?
It's fantastic. Like, I like everything that's going on. It makes me want to, like, do more narrative stuff. Vince and I've kicked around at least doing a series of like battle. I wanna figure out the way to do narrative battle reports, to lean into like the narrative storytelling. I don't know what that looks like yet, but I think that I think that would be a neat thing to do. I think there's a lot of opportunity there for our viewers, for our content producers, to wrestle with what does it look like to do narrative battle reports. And I haven't unlocked that cookie yet. I'm gonna figure it out. But I love the structure within the book and what implications it might have for how we tell stories and how we do games. Let me say it that way.
Well, Tom, something you've talked about for a while was doing the end time scenarios as an ongoing narrative in AOS. You do know that a member of the community just put up a conversion for all 50 scenarios into AOS battle plans.
I did not know that. That's hilarious, though.
You got to get on Twitter, man.
They absolutely, they put it out as a whole big book that you can get. I believe they also posted it up on TGA. I saw it on Twitter first, yes. So you can get all the end time scenarios converted over to AOS now. I will find that link. I'll go dig through my Twitter feed and find that link and throw that in the show notes.
All I'm saying is that is begging for a battle report series.
Sure, absolutely. All right. I don't have a huge amount to add to it except to say that here's a section where I really want to see some more. I want to see more recreation of famous battles, like those end times things we just talked about. Like that's 50 scenarios, right? And here you've got this big, massive, incredible defeat of Nagash. But I am all about seeing more of that stuff. Using those classic scenarios, recreating them. I think that would be really cool to play through, even with different forces, not necessarily using the same armies, but just experiencing those classic battles. So I would definitely love to see more of that. I think everything that's in here is solid. I think that if anything, again, this is the one part of the book that to me I was like, I love everything here. Yep. Give me more, right? Like honestly, I didn't get enough. This just whet my palate for it. It did not satisfy the hunger. So I hope to see a lot more of this on a go forward. There is some absolutely stunning pictures of the battle in here because they did actually lay this out because obviously they have the figs to do this insane battle. So there are some fun, awesome pictures in there. All right, so continuing on in the narrative section, we come to the Path to Glory campaigns, right? And so many people will remember this was a thing from the Advent calendar. They did the Path to Glory campaign where you were Chaos Warbands fighting for the favor of the Chaos Gods. So this is a sort of Mordheim-esque thing. Slightly bigger, I would say, forces, but not I would say they are. But they expanded it out. It's no longer just Chaos. Now you have a host of different forces, although certainly not everybody, right? Because now you've got Chaos, you got the Iron Jaws, you got the Stormcast, you got the Fire Slayers, Skaven, Sylvaneth. Trying to think of who else I'm missing. Death. Thank you. Yep, there you go. I was flipping through quickly trying to remember as I was burning through trying to remember everyone. So Jeff, back to you, buddy. What do you think of the Path to Glory as it's laid out in here? What's your feelings on it?
So I basically only had heard the name Path to Glory before this book came out and before the rumors started breaking about it being a part of this book. And I knew that it had something to do with the Advent calendar. I knew it was online, they released it or whatever, but I never read any of the materials. And I read through this for the first time a couple days ago, and I love it. It's awesome. As someone who takes a year to paint a single grid unclean one model, I love smaller games because I could actually field fully painted armies. I can't field 24 Vanguard ever in my life. That's just not happening. So I like the idea of building slowly. There's also a thing called Regiments of Renown. So Warhammer World is doing a Regiment of Renown tournament coming up, which is like a 100-point game where you pick individual models out of units. So that reminds me of an even smaller scale version of this, but this seems to be like an intermediary between like a 1,000-point battle or a 1,500-point battle and a Regiments of Renown. And I like that you track the games. I like that you can do things in the scenarios to gain glory points. So if anyone hasn't read this yet, you try to get 10 glory points or whatever amount that you guys decide before the campaign starts. And you can get additional glory points by not taking as many units in your army, or you can get them by doing things in the scenarios, and obviously by winning games. And so it's first to that amount of points, and then you play one more game to win on top. You gotta win by 2, so to speak. And I love it. I like that. They have a lot of different warbands in here. I think that anyone could make up their own if your army isn't covered. And who knows, maybe they'll be releasing more online for free. I don't know, but we could all kind of come up with our own pretty easily. And they have at least one per Grand Alliance, so you could use those traits or those gifts and stuff if you're victorious. So you don't have to change that part. Overall, I think it's really, really cool, and yet another way to play AOS, a totally different way to integrate your games to one another.
Yep. Tommy, what's your feelings?
I want more. Is like, this is one area where I felt like they just needed to have more sub-factions covered. It's most of the new stuff that we saw. It's your chaos with most of the newer stuff, and I wanted more. These didn't hit the sub-factions that I wanted. Obviously, granted, a lot of the sub-factions are some of the older stuff that I'm interested in, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. To me, I didn't feel that in this, and here's the reason why. Once you read over the Path to Glory stuff,
yep,
it's so obvious how this is all constructed, right? Like, you could make your own table for putting together your warband, like on the fly, like immediately. It wouldn't even take work. And since you've got like rewards tables out of every faction, you could just borrow that rewards table. You don't even have to write a new rewards table, right? Like, when you look at the sort of way that it tends to work with your champion is, if you've got a champion on a big monster, you get a smaller number of units, and then the weaker your champion gets, the more units you get, right? And so on and so forth. And so really, like, replacing those items with just whatever you want out of your other stuff wouldn't be that hard, especially since there are some throughout here that honestly aren't amazingly big or filled out even as it is, right? Like in the Skaven section, there's some that are fairly thin as far as, like, if you go Clan Skyer, your champion is an Arch Warlock. Like, that's what it is, right? And then, you have multiple selections of the same thing on every, like, you've got 2 roles that are Acolytes, 2 roles that are Storm Fiends, 2 roles that are Jezzails, and so on and so forth, right? So to me, it's actually really simple to just drop in that stuff. And, I mean, maybe there is some value here of just having them all printed for all of them. But I don't know, man. If they had really went too deep, this could have been something that's just like chewing up pages. I'm maybe a few more, but I'm pretty okay with where we landed, just because we definitely got enough here to have a wide variance and to be able to make your own with confidence. That's my personal feeling. But I could see it, people wanting it printed for legitimacy, as it were.
It's not real unless it's in paper.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the Chaos Dwarf player in me coming out. Sure.
Well, that's a good point. By that standard, you've more or less never had a real army, so that's exciting. I like that. Yeah, I think that what I love about overall, what I would say that is good about it is you've got a lot of very fun, flavorful things that show up on these random tables. Everything that you do can be either chosen or rolled randomly, right? Like that is to say, you can like when you're getting your followers, I could just choose Storm Fiends, right? If I'm playing in Clan Skyer, or I could roll a d6 and see what I get. What I would say is, if you have a big enough collection to roll randomly, roll randomly. If you don't, and you've only got enough to support particular things, then just pick those particular things.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, like, never steer away from a random roll. Let fate decide, and play pickup sticks, right? Like just see, let the chips fall. In the end, you're going to have a much bigger challenge on your hands when you end up with whatever weird thing you've rolled into. So yeah, that's my feeling on that. Yeah. All right. Any other thoughts on the Path to Glory before we move on?
No, I'm good.
All right. Okay. Next up, map campaigns. Now, I called this one out, even though it's short. Like, in the book, this is the amount of space dedicated to map campaigns. You are looking at the sum total of space for map campaigns right there. And I'm going to jump right ahead on this one, because this is my bag right here. I love me a map campaign. I've mentioned it at least 3 times on the show. This is a 4th. I love a map campaign. I love that we got a fun little map to play on. Here's what I want. Why is this not available in some file somewhere? Maybe it is. If it is, somebody please post a link. And if I'm stupid, if GW posted this on their Facebook and I missed it, tell me. But I want a file of this map that I can print out and make it like real big. I want to put it on my wall and stick like little colored thumbtacks into it for who owns each landmark, right? That's what I want to do. I want to have a map. I want it to be on my table. I want to feel it, touch it. I want to conquer the Thornwind Sanctum and know it is mine, for now it is emblazoned with the mark of the Verminous Horde, right? That's what I want. Something like that. This was another place, like, I like that they give you some sample victories of what you get out of it, from the places they're here. Again, would have loved a massive random table off of this one for more. This is, to me, one of the areas of rich possibility, either for them to expand on or for somebody in the community to expand on. And I really hope somebody runs with this and takes this framework that's here, because it really is a framework, and just goes hog wild. I would be all into that.
I'd love to,
because it's a little light.
Yeah, I'd love to look back in a year at what the community has produced. I mean, in the past year, we produced like 5 different composition systems. In this next year, given that we have a composition system in place already now, I'd love to see what the creativity of the community brings about. I mean, I spent a couple hours one night and made Triumph and Treachery cards. Yep. That was one night. I mean, imagine what thousands and thousands of people could do if they feel like it, with expanding out this stuff, making tables, making their own maps. We could have files of these things up on like one of the forums, easily accessible for forever. It's awesome.
Yep, agreed. Tommy, any thoughts on the map campaigns?
I mean, I love it, and it makes me want to create a little like 15 to 20 page like Blood in the Badlands PDF pack style campaign system. And this is something that you and I were talking about, Vince, putting out already. So I mean, there's just so many good possibilities here.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with you. There's we'll probably talk about it later with points, and there was some questions that we'll come to about the nature of having a point system versus having other community comps and such. And I do think you're not wrong there, that like having this as a baseline, those points out there as a baseline, okay, so now that that's there, let's see what else we can build on top of that, right? Because we can either use those or eschew those as we want, but let's dig deeper. If we've shown all the stuff we can do, I absolutely agree with you. That's a call to arms for the community. Like, let's do it. Make some stuff. If people don't like it, then who cares? Like, oh well, you still made something. It's out there. Somebody could use it, right? Like, just the more the merrier. I completely agree. All right, let's get into it then. Next section. Here we go. The thing that I'm sure many people have been sitting at the edge of their chairs waiting for, right? So let's talk about it, and that is the
Only an
match.
hour and a half in.
This is about this book, not just about points or match play. But that being said, let's talk about match play. And I actually want to start out with the ladder campaign stuff, okay? Because I think that's the often overlooked section of this book. So Jeff, what do you think about sort of the ladder campaigns and the rules that they put in here?
I liked it. I liked that it's a constantly fluctuating list. Essentially, you just if someone who's lower than you have a list of players, right, who joined the ladder, league, and every time you play a game, you go up or down based on who you beat and who you lose to, and it's simple. It's nothing like perfect in terms of the best player throughout the entire league winning the entire league. The person who's in first place could get beaten by the person in last place the last day and the last player hops to the top after getting their teeth kicked in forever. But on the other hand, that means that no one's ever out of it, and anyone has a chance to dethrone the leader, and that's pretty cool. I like it. It's simple. Any store could run it. It would take so little effort to keep track of that kind of thing if you were the manager of a hobby shop. Just really cool. It's simple mechanic to make your games matter in some sort of linked way, but at the same time it's nothing too arduous to keep track of. So I thought it was cool.
Yeah, agreed. One of the things that I love, so here's the ladder campaigns thing, and what is this right? Oh, let me just get it in frame here. What is this right over here on the side? What is that? Oh my goodness, it's a call-out box. It's exactly what I had mentioned that we talked about last week in my RPG podcast, link below. It's really great. That little hints and tips is awesome because what it does is it ties it all together, right? It says basically, here's how you could form a league. Here's how you could play your games. Maybe you use the Path to Glory stuff. Maybe you use the pitched battle rules. Maybe you have a final showdown with the multiplayer rules, right? And it's showing you how to grab these disparate elements and start pulling them together in your league to do special events, to do these tie-in games, right? Here, use these different scenarios all throughout here. Perfect. Right? It's this sort of culmination of here's how you can synergize all these ideas together to do a really fun experience of not just a single game, but of something that we can all work together on, right? So to me, that was the thing in this section that absolutely stood out. Tommy, I know I jumped right in front of you there. I just bowled over your turn. But did you have any other thoughts as well on the ladder campaign?
No, I mean, on one hand, it looked like standard ladder campaign format. It just didn't. I mean, it did what it needed to do. It walked people through. But what I found so fascinating was it's a mundane thing. Anybody that's run any type of tournament ever knows the basic function and format of a ladder campaign, and yet they trotted it out for people in a very simple, straightforward format. And kudos to them for doing that, because I would have never expected to see something like that in a GW book.
Right.
If you'd asked me that a year ago, I'd have been like, what?
All right. So next up, we're gonna get into the scenarios that are in the book for match play, right? So there are 6 scenarios out of the box. You got your Take and Hold, Blood and Glory, Escalation, Border War, 3 Places of Power, and Gifts from the Heavens. So, what's your thought about these scenarios? Number, the way they're in there, the sort of, etc. Obviously, you can randomly determine which one you play. Like always, you've got your triumphs that can give you bennies, going into the game, and so on and so forth. Jeff, what did you think of the basic scenarios they chose here?
This might be the best crop of 6 scenarios that they've released for one of their Warhammer games, as far as I can remember. This might be the best one. it's so clearly stamped with the mark of people like Ben Curry and Dan Heelan and Russ Beal and those guys, and people who have played Warhammer tournaments for a long time. These seem inherently fair. There's no wonky mechanics that it might disadvantage one army over another that I can see, from my reading of them. They are interesting. They've moved us very far away from, the 20-0 system of just kill more points. At no point in these games will you ever retreat a unit just to save its points, which would never happen in a battle, ever, so that, like, you save your unit of, like, your vampire, so he doesn't die, on turn 6. You run in the opposite direction so that your opponent can't charge you or something that would have happened all the time in 8th edition tournaments. Instead, these are objective-based, and yet the way in which you secure the objectives is different based on the scenario. Sometimes you have to have more models. Sometimes you have to have a hero. Sometimes the objective disappears, and and you're left to scramble to adapt to that. I think these are great. They're just 6 different tactically stimulating ways to play the game, and I think tournaments are going to take these and use them pretty regularly. I mean, I'm sure at some point we'll make our own, for different GTs, but there's nothing wrong with these as far as I can see, unless I'm missing something. They're great.
Yep.
I'll be the negative Nancy.
Oh, okay.
Go for it, man.
I knew you would.
Yeah, it comes natural. They are, and I mean, just initial gloss, like, they seem to be very troop heavy. So all of it is based on being able to claim objectives, and all that's based on the number of bodies you have near objectives. Which heavily influences, like, MSU armies, more elite armies, and so in a very real way, not only is it points that are shaping your forces that you build, and slots that are shaping the forces you build, which are two factors that are significant. The scenarios are now pushing in on your forces, because it's saying you can't run a Blight King's army, even if you're running all those points, because you need to be able to hold objectives. And in order to do that, you need more bodies than what you have.
Potentially.
And so my main pushback being, I think that some armies are going to excel in this format, with these scenarios, more than other armies. So that's all I would say. I mean, in general, I like them. I agree, they're very well balanced. But you need bodies. There's just no way to get around that. And it influences some of those armies that are based on mobility, and it influences some of those armies more, I would argue, that are based on low model counts. You lose a handful of models, and then suddenly you can't claim some objectives anymore.
Yeah, I mean, here's what I'll say to that. I don't know that I agree with you. So 3 out of 6 of the scenarios, the objectives are taken by having more models near the objective. Okay.
Yep.
The other 3 are not like that. Take and hold, you have to have. It's not about the number. It's just about having 5. Period. Okay. So, like,
which is an
doesn't
entire
really matter.
unit of blanket.
But there's only 2
Sure. Okay.
objectives on the board there, though.
Right. There's 2 objectives, and you got to have 5 models from it, and they don't even have to be from the same unit. It's just any 5 models. The last 2, which are also my favorite 2, because they're the ones with actually a narrative element to them. Like, I appreciate at the same time that as the base 6 scenarios that they offer in this book, they have to be kind of vanilla, right? Like, you can't start out with you can't bring in the Looney Tunes first, right?
Sure.
If you go back and look at the 9 scenarios in the Mordheim book, that I love, but they were pretty vanilla, right? You had, like, a brawl in the street and a walking down the street and getting into a fight and an ambush and whatever, right? So I get it. They have to be more stock, I guess. But the last 2 are much more different, in the 3 places of power and the gifts from the heavens, which I love the mechanic of gifts from the heavens. Gifts from the heavens, by the way, that isn't really gifts. It's big meteors striking the ground randomly that you then have to control. My only sadness about them is that they don't, like, completely decimate units that they land near. I would be much more in favor of it if they did. And if I play the scenario, I want to see massive numbers of mortal wounds being spread out from these meteors as they hit the ground. And maybe even like a radiation in the turns after. Yeah, all right. I like punishment in my games. What can I say?
You're Timmy.
Indeed, I am. So like 3 places of power is about having a hero near the objective, right? And the gifts from the heavens is just any models from your army. Like that's it. Just like one or all. It doesn't matter. Just model is what controls it. And moreover, I would say like if you're running Blight Kings or something, right? Well, yeah, like you're at a disadvantage at a point because if they have 20 of some garbage troop and you have 5 Blight Kings, and you're both just standing there, they win it. I agree. Like they hold the objective, right? Because they outmodel you. That being said, those Blight Kings are elite for a reason. I have played Jeff when he's had Blight Kings under his control and watched as his Blight Kings plowed their way through my larger number of models. And very quickly, and we played an objective game, and very quickly I had less models near the objective. Like very quickly, shockingly quickly, did I have less models near the objective. So, I mean, it just means that if you're bringing brutal, elite, small units, they just have to actually pull their weight. Sure, they can't just stand around. They can't just win by presence, right? But I wouldn't say out of the gate that it disadvantages
both
them
sets
in
are
a
going to be
huge way.
losing. But both armies are going to be suffering attrition. Like everybody's going to be losing models.
Sure. But do you really bleed Blight Kings as fast as you bleed Empire Spearmen?
They're 4-up save. They've got 3 wounds each, and there are ways to heal them if you're playing all Nurgle that
right.
they can be pretty easily healed. Yeah, one other thing here, and I guess this doesn't work for your Blight King example, Tom, but one other dimension to this is summoning. And 3 out of the 4 Grand Alliances summon. For now, we'll see what happens when other destruction things, Moon Clan Grots could summon. Who knows? We'll see what happens. But like summoning a unit of Plague Bears that suck, by the way. They're a battle line unit and they straight suck. I hate them. But summoning them onto an objective turn 2, they're a little resilient from shooting, and they just popped in. Now they're claiming an objective for me. That's interesting. And that's a cool way to make battle line units. So make battle line units work for you, even if they wouldn't make it across the battlefield if they just had to march. But I don't know. We'll have to see how it all shakes out, I guess, Tom. You might be right, and we might look back at this in 6 months and say, ooh, yeah, that won't work for some armies. But I don't know. I think we'll see.
I would say this, like, they don't count as battle line if you've allocated those as summoning. Because those are reinforcement points that you've allocated. So even if you're summoning battle line, they still don't count. It is. So if you look back in the beginning of General's Handbook, what you allocate when you're building your force is you allocate a certain number of points to reinforcements, and when you summon things, they come out of that reinforcement.
Yeah. No, I got that part. Okay. That's interesting.
So you don't have to pre-decide, hence they can't be locked.
Yeah. Got it.
Right.
Okay,
yeah, you don't need to pre-decide, and so you can't It's a great. It would be a great idea to use those for battle line in that way. Unfortunately, that's not how it works. You still have to have battle line on the table. The good news is that with Blight Kings, like if you were doing like an all faction force like that, you could still do Blight Kings and include like those demons in your force through the reinforcement pool. Because you're not building, you don't have to designate your summon pool before the game starts.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, so you could build like a 1,500 Blight Kings force, like a
summon and Nurgle stuff. That's really
summon and Nurgle stuff. Yeah.
Oh, I like that. Okay, cool.
As the demons show up to help their mortal followers, because because an old grandfather Nurgle, he's a kind and beneficent master. Certainly wants to help out his sick little people. He's a giver. Yes, definitely true. Yeah, and the other thing I'll say is I'm not sure that the focus on having models in half the scenarios is a bad thing. Monsters are pretty powerful. Heroes are pretty powerful.
Yep.
It's good to have something pushing against that.
Yeah, and that's all I'm saying is that like this is something that a lot of people haven't talked about,
right.
Which is in addition to slots and points, you also have these scenarios that are going to be pushing in on what you're for. Like, you need to build with an eye towards having bodies, in some instances.
Sure.
Like, you need to build that way.
Or at the very least, something outsizedly killy, right?
Yes.
If you yeah.
Yes. Or something that can target, like a Hell Cannon or something like that can target larger masses of troops and thin down numbers.
Yeah. Like, in my Triumphant Treachery game on Saturday, the other so the two other players, one of them had a unit of 30 Chaos Marauders. Okay, so that's a big unit for holding stuff, right? And the other player had, cannons, lots of cannons, and in the first round, fired one cannon twice at that Marauder unit, hit twice, wounded twice, and rolled a 6 and 5 on the damage. And that 30. Yeah, indeed. Yeah, exactly. Just the Empire gun line is strong with him. It was like, real quick, not to take this off the rails, but it was 2 cannons, a steam tank, 2 massive units of handgunners, and a Huracanum in the middle, buffing everything. Like, that was the army, just this wall of lead waiting to travel outward. Yep, that's the army he loves. That's what I play against all the time. So, I don't like anybody who complains about shooting. I'm like, yeah, whatever. Like, trust me, I know. It's fine. I still run monsters all the time.
Jeff, I can't hear you. You're muted right now.
Sorry about that. Yeah, you should make that guy play the defender in that open play scenario, and then getting up on him. That'd be a fun way to play
that. Well, that was what was great too, because we were both playing Chaos, and I was Dean, he was Nurgle, and at the beginning of the night, with classic enemies, right? And so at the beginning of it, we actually were like both going straight toward him, like we were going to gang up and take him. But before we hit his battle lines, we both just went like, nope, and just charged each other in the back, like back to back. We both just turned on each other.
And he sat back and shot. Oh,
no, I mean, we ended up dedicating units to him too. It honestly ended in a massive bloodbath and a draw, basically. So it was perfect. Everybody lost stuff. It was pretty much a draw. It was a great game of Triumphant Treachery. Everybody turned on everybody, as it should be. Anyway.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think ultimately what I want to see is these are 6 what I would say are decent scenarios, right? Yeah. They're a good starting point. What I want to see us go into in the same way we went with Mordheim is I want to see more flavorful, narratively based scenarios, even in the pitch match play, right? We can still have very hard rules around objectives and movement and things I've got to take and places I've got to be. That's all good. Just put some narrative framework around it like you did in Gifts from the Heaven and 3 Places of Power that also make me feel like I'm engaging and doing something besides just picking up a token sitting on the battlefield, right? Like a reason for being. Because to me, it doesn't take much. Just give me a reason, right? Like, make it just saying I'm going after this poker chip isn't very compelling. I'll do it, but it's not, it doesn't feel the same as if I'm going after, like, the sword of Sharakul or something. I don't know. You make it up. Like, that's not my job. That's the point. Like, just be creative about it in some way. So I hope to see more of that.
So I get that critique, Vince, but it sounds like you want to, create more narrative elements for these, pitch battle games. But the way I'm reading the pitch battle is like comparing them to previous tournament scenarios, which were just straight, like many of them just battle line, straight up vanilla. And this is so much more interesting than those that, like, I'm just
beyond
for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the most important part about it is that these objectives determine who wins the game, right?
Yeah.
And so, as somebody who plays a lot of, like, I've been obviously I mixed in a lot of Malifaux into my rotation as well, and you can end a game of Malifaux with 1 model left on the table, and the enemy having had their whole crew left, but if you scored more victory points because you played the actual scenario, you achieved your strats and schemes, you're the winner, right? Like, that's, the scenario determines all. Murder counts for not much. In fact, getting your models killed is actually one of the things that can gain you points with certain schemes. So which by the way, I want to see that come in here somehow. Like, I want to see Framed for Murder come into this somehow. But So I agree. The fact that the objectives determine victory, the fact that that's what they're all about, the fact that these have different deployments, different movements, different objectives completely, yes, agreed. Paradigm shift. No disagreement there. I'm just saying, like, let's also throw a little bit of trappings around it, right? Let's spice it up. It doesn't take much more, right? Like I said, the last two are right in my wheelhouse. That's just what I'm looking for. More like the last two.
Gotcha.
There you go. Yep. All right. So, scenarios out of the way, of course, there is only one thing to talk about. Which, by the way, can we just mention that I love that they have a picture-based battle report in here, in between this? I do love that. That's fun. I can't wait for White
Dwarf-esque.
Yeah, I want White. Like, I'm pretty sure the new White Dwarf's gonna have battle reports in it again, probably featuring the new things they just released in the last month, like they used to back in the day. And I'm gonna make a bold prediction. Whatever got released is gonna win most of the time. So, yeah, we've got that to look forward to again. But with that, let's turn to the points. Of course, we couldn't not discuss the points. So we're not gonna go through everything's army. I think we did this on a video a little while ago. So for now, we're just gonna talk about points at a high level. So. And you can fold in like the Force org chart in here if you want to, but riff on it however you like. What do you feel about the points overall? Are they fair? Do you like how they're organized? Do you like the way you assign them? Just, dive in. Take it away, Jeff. It's all you, buddy.
I've got one word for you guys. Ghettoization. Tommy?
I love it.
There are 60 different armies in here.
Yep.
They're all of them, every single one. No, I'm just joking. I like them. I think that the points overall feel about right. I think that it's simple. I can make an army list in my head without even, breaking a sweat now. That's really cool. I love that you have these armies where you can theme it more, and then you take battle line units. For example, we use the Blight Kings again and again, but the Blight Kings are a good example. The Nurgle Mortal Army, where you get Rotbringers, you get Blight Kings as battle line if you keep within the theme. That's really cool. The one thing I would say, if I'm going to throw out a critique too, is that I do think monsters are pointed a little bit too high. Not the special character monsters. I think Alariel is actually a little low. But I think the monsters might be a little bit higher than they need to be. Some of them, not all of them. But
like which ones?
I think that the giant. Well, the giant 180. That could be a little bit lower, probably.
Really?
Yeah, I think so.
That dude is dirt cheap. He is affordable. You could roll out with like 4 of him easy in a 2,000 point force.
Prices on giants. They're giving them away at the 5 and dime. Absolutely.
Like that. You are trading a giant for 10 Chaos Warriors. That's what you're comparing there, and you're saying that giant is not swinging his weight versus 10 Chaos Warriors.
I think the Chaos Warriors could take them. I've played and lost with giants many times, my friend. Yeah, I don't know.
All I'm saying is that at 180, I think I might put them on the table.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that I could come up with a couple more examples probably if I look through, but
that's fair.
Yeah, I mean, overall though, I think the points are solid. I think they really just took the Heel and Hammer South Coast GT comp multiplied by 5, and here we are. I think that they pretty much knocked it out of the park in terms of trying to balance the army selection.
Tom, we'll go to you next, buddy. What do you think? What do you think about the points overall?
Overall, I like it. I love the competing structure of both points and slots. I think that works really well for them, how they've scaled it. I think that there are questions at the non tiered stuff. So not at 1,000, 2,000, or 2,500. Like, what does it mean to run a 1,500 point game? Do you just use the 1,000 values?
Yeah, that's what we did.
Yeah, and I'm assuming that that's the case.
Yeah.
But yeah. So on one hand, that's what I would say. On the other hand, I think that some, especially if you're allowed to pick your, and we'll get to this later, your items and your alliance abilities, I think that some of these sub-factions far outpace other factions. And I had talked about this on a prior video, that I think that some sub-factions are more complete. And the older stuff, honestly, is aggressively costed. Chaos Dwarves, Forge World Chaos Dwarves are aggressively costed. I don't care who you are. Go pick up that book. It's crazy what you're staring down with the Chaos Dwarf point allocations. Likewise, Tomb Kings. Man, Tomb Kings they're a beast. Like, if I run in a tournament, I'm probably going to run Tomb Kings here on out, just because they're so ridiculously competitive point-wise.
And I will take 3 Snake Surfers at 160 against your dumb 180 giant, and that's going to end in a dead giant.
I'll
tell you how that battle shapes up any day of the week and twice on Sunday with a giant corpse. That's how that ends.
Maybe he'll get lucky and fall on you.
Because here's the deal: if you don't eliminate,
best chance to deal wounds.
If you don't eliminate all 3 of those, the unit will completely go back to full wounds at the beginning of every turn.
More or less, yes. Assuming you can cast a very low-cost spell, yes.
Or you have a skeleton banner, because they have the skeleton keyword, and so the Tomb Herald will pop back all skeleton units restore 1 model.
Yes.
So between their own banner and the hero, it'll autofill, go from 1 to 3 on those Snake Riders every turn. At 160.
Yeah, I mean, sure. Yeah, I agree with you. I think what this says is, I do certainly agree with the point that you're making here, that when I read over these factions, some of them just scream off the page to be played, right?
Yep.
Like, you look at them and they feel so healthy and full and fun as a sub-faction, right?
Yep.
When I look at, the Slaves to Darkness, when I look at even some of the stuff that hasn't got an update, and I don't mean that by it's a retired line, like say the TK or the Bretts. I'm talking the Host of Slaanesh. Obviously I have a big love of Slaanesh, but they've got it because the Host of Slaanesh is both immortal and demon stuff. It's a nice, healthy list full of a lot of different fun options, right? It just looks like it's got cool stuff in it, and you don't. I wouldn't struggle to build a list there. In fact, my only struggle would be not being able to include every fun thing I wanted to put in, right? Mm-hmm. Quite the opposite. Not that I'm hunting around. The Khorne stuff, the Nurgle stuff, right? There's a lot of them here that are pretty darn awesome and healthy. Obviously, all the new ones fall into this too, the new Beastclaw stuff that's just about to come out, or the Iron Jaws, or the Sylvan Neck.
The flesh, the bone
flesh eater,
yeah.
All of those are really good, and I think that there's still some of the old factions that we know, the updates are probably coming at some point. I look at the Devoted of Sigmar, as an example, just to bang on something I've banged on a bunch of times, and I'm just no, I can't. Nothing about that interests me. It should be something I want to play so bad because it's got the name of the game in the faction. Name of the game is in the faction. Yep. And yet it's garbage. I don't mean that from a points wise, or it's good on the table. I'm not even talking that. It's just not big enough. It's just not. You look at it, and there's nothing compelling that makes you want to put it on the table. Yeah, thematically, take power, take competitiveness. You bin all that. I don't even care. I'm just saying, looking at the faction from an interesting point of view, I'm I've got a 10-year-old Flagellant box set and 2 standalone heroes on foot. I guess you can put one on a horse, and an altar. Yeah, and it's just
what? Yeah, I feel the same way about Phoenix Temple.
That's not an army.
With Phoenix Temple, you have Phoenix, dudes on foot. like
Right.
10 dudes on foot, and then the standalone hero that can also basically, you don't need him because you can just stick one of those dudes on a Phoenix. And so basically, in my mind, like you have 2 units that you would play if you build a Phoenix army: dudes on feet with halberds, and birds with guys on halberds on the back. Now, that said, that's all you need. But
Sure, it's still a strong faction, like, and that's just it. There's a difference between competitive nature and sort of like thematic interest, right? And that's what you're putting your finger on. Like, it's probably perfectly competitive. Those those Phoenix are amazing, but yeah. So I think, to me, when I look at a lot of this, what I think is, in a year, I would love to see what that section looks like, right? Because they've shown they'll blow one of these things out in a weekend, right? Yeah. Like, that's clearly happened now 3 times. It's going to keep happening. They have seized on an idea here. We can just take one of these, drop it in a weekend, and people will be like me, man. When the Sylvaneth weekend happened, you bet your butt I was at my game store and I was just like, yep. All this too. I'm ready. Let's go. I got to get home and start gluing. Like, it's just like when one hits that you love, you're going to be there.
Vince, I have to point out, you had said, how long ago was this? Like 8 weeks ago, maybe 3 months ago, that you're like, nope, they're not doing it. They're not going to build any of these old factions out. They're only releasing new stuff from here on out. Do you remember you making that claim?
I did absolutely make that claim, and thus far I haven't been proven really wrong. That is to say, like, when we got the Bone Splitters, we're getting a different idea of it. We haven't got new models for those things, and that was the claim I was making. That we're not going to get new models for that.
Sylvaneth, we got new models.
Yeah, Sylvaneth's the only one.
Same keyword, new models.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it wasn't really a standalone army before. But hey, look, here's
Flesh Eater Courts.
Here's the bottom line. Sorry, you're fine. Here's the bottom line. Good. You know what? I'll fully take it on the chin. I'll say I was totally wrong. I don't even care what I actually said. I hope I'm wrong. I think I said that then too, but I'll say that again now.
Yeah.
I hope I'm dead wrong, 100% wrong, right? If they just started blowing out some of these old factions with a slightly new take, if this is what we keep doing, and we start getting new model releases mixed in, not just taking the big Stava and making it a unit now, right? We got like 60 dudes with giant spears running around. Yeah, I'm all about it.
Which I'm in, by the way, if you just want to do big Stavas.
Sure. Well, I know you celebrated the birth of the Fanatic as a standalone unit, so I'm sure that any sort of cheaty hidden unit, you're just going to wait for the Night Skulker or Skulker, Sneaky Skulkers, whatever they were called.
Nasty
just a unit of Goblin, the unit of Goblin Stabas coming out. Yeah, that's going to happen, I'm sure.
Yeah, so we'll have to see where it goes from here. I'm really curious to know if they pick certain ones and bulk them out with more kits, or if they just do this reassembly multiple war scrolls for the same kit thing they've been doing, or some combination of the two. I don't know. I have no idea what's coming next. I really don't.
So
yeah, it's a funny world to live in. I agree with you. I'm just like no clue.
So we've kind of tipped our hand at these. And so, Vince, you're not allowed to pick Devoted Sigmar. If you guys were to pick one of these sub-factions, like, I'm not going to pick Phoenix Temple because I've already repped that. So if you were to pick one sub-faction from the current list, what do you want to see fleshed out?
Okay, got it. I have to pick one, and that is the next one that gets
I want to hear
that gets a full expansion. Absolutely.
Yeah, like, it gets the Beastclaw, like, they get the Alariel, the Sylvaneth treatment. They get the new models. Yeah. Book. Yep. The whole shebang.
Okay. I'm with that. Am I going first, or is Jeff going first? Who are we putting on the spot first with this?
Sorry, Jeff. You're the guest.
That's right.
I've got two. Well, one I think I might be stealing yours, Tom, and I really don't mean to. It's not even a joke. I think Spiderfang Grotz would be awesome. But since I think that's the one you're going to pick anyways, I want to go with what is the order? It's the Dark Elves that are like the Sea Dark Elves. What are they called?
Corsairs.
Yeah, the Corsairs.
Scourge Privateers. Yep.
Scourge Privateers. I'd like to see that. I'd like to see a pirate-themed, more sea monsters and maybe monstrous cav sea monsters or something like that.
Yeah. Fish people, here they come. half fish, half elves. There you
God.
go.
Yeah, exactly.
Sounds so terrible.
We've cracked the case. That's how fish people get in the game. They were never fish people at all. They were fish elves. There you go.
Oh.
See? Problem solved.
No.
All right. Tom, my answer to this is easy, and like if I could, it would be devoted, but to the side because you said this have to go to the side.
Yep.
My answer is easy. It's the Warherd, the Minotaur faction within the Beastmen.
Yeah.
Because right now you've got Gorgon, Stygor, the Minotaurs themselves, and the Jumble.
Oh,
right?
so you have 4 units right now.
Yeah, 4. Yeah.
Man, you're halfway to a release there.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I wouldn't need that much. I just need
Yeah.
I need something that's actually like a thing in the army besides Minotaurs. Like, I love Minotaurs. And I want the Warherd to be cool, but I feel like there's some more stuff we could do there, right? So yeah, Warherd. That's what I want. And hey, why not bring back the Beastmen? Like, I've got a good-sized Beastmen force going, but that would push me over the line to like flesh that out all the way. So
Sure. So obviously Spider Fang for me are going to be the low-hanging fruit. Like, obviously I want that. And that's happening. Like, that's not something that I have to imagine very far ahead. I honestly think our first Goblin release is going to be Spider Fang. Like,
I agree. They've been talking about him since book 1.
Yeah,
like,
they're in every book. They're like, they already have a named character that showed up. They're already talking about the plot and the realm web and like all that stuff's happening. So they're going to be our first Goblin release. They're likely going to be our first Goblin release. Let me say it that way. But the one that I really like, if I were to look at something and say, you know what, 1, I want to see what that treatment looks like, and 2, damn, are they incomplete right now? And that's the Lion Rangers. Okay?
Yeah.
This is the White Lions that are currently White Lions and White Lion Chariots with no heroes and no battle line. So like you can't run them. It's not possible to run them as their own thing.
Sure.
Right now.
Yeah, even the like Shadow Blades, which is the similar to the 2-unit Dark Elves, which is Assassins and Dark Riders, actually is a feasible army because the Assassins are leaders and the Dark Riders become battle line if you're in faction. So you legitimately could make an army of just that thing. I mean, it's the silliest army.
And you could hide them in the Dark Riders.
Yeah.
You could hide the Assassins like clinging onto the side of the horses. But right now, like, you can't do that with the Lion Rangers at all. And I think, like, man, if there is any faction that's like that would be visually compelling, I think that the Elf Lion Rangers would be very compelling.
Yep. No, I'm with you on that. So, do we have some final thoughts on the points? I agree. I think for the most part, it's close enough. That's my feeling on it. Everybody knows I have a pretty heavy tolerance for this, but for the most part, like in the game we played, we had 3 different armies, and everybody at the end, like after the game, we talked and we were like, "Well, what do we think?" And even with the gun line of murder, everybody was like, "Yeah, felt pretty fair." Like, everybody felt like they had a chance. Everybody killed everything. It's fine. Like that was our initial feeling after using them. A sum total of obviously, we've used the hard points 1 game now because we didn't use points ever before this. So there you go. My other final thought that I want to point out in the points section is for points only games. Did you notice this little note right here? This points only games thing? So
I'm sure I read it, but I can't remember.
So it's on the page 128, and it's right next to the index where it gives you the list of all the factions. And it says very clearly, I'll just read this to people, if you wish, you can use these points on their own. Just agree with your opponent how many points will be used, which can be as high or low as you like. When playing a points-only game, ignore the limits on the number of leader, battle line, behemoth, and artillery units you can take. You can take any units you like, as long as they do not exceed the points limit you have set for your game. Great. Good stuff. Because they even point out that like some of the battalions you can't use in a normal game because it's going to require you to take like 7 leader behemoths, right, or something, So like, cool, if you want to do that, just get rid of the stupid structure. Like, the structure's there to give you a baseline. It's not there to become dictum, right? And I love that that's directly printed right there. Throw it out if you don't want it. Knock yourself out. You know, and that's I'm all about that. Yeah. Any other final thoughts from you gentlemen on the point section before we move on to our final topic in match play?
No, nothing to add.
All right. So, final. You're on mute, Tom, by the way, in case you said something. I'm going to assume he didn't. Okay. There you go. Welcome back, Tom. Now you're not on mute. Okay. Final section I wanted to talk about is obviously the allegiance abilities, right? These are a whole new thing, and obviously what these consist of is a battle trait for your army when you declare allegiance to, you know, order or whatever. Obviously in the new books, I've got the Sylvaneth book behind me, you can also declare to the sub-factions, and those will all be coming out en masse. Obviously the Bone Splitters got their new one, the Beastclaw people will get their new one, and rumor is we're going to get a book coming out basically next month that's going to have allegiance abilities for all the sub-factions, so, you know, there you go. But you get a trait, you get a command trait, and you can pick up, you know, an artifact for your general, and maybe a couple more depending on your War Scroll battalions. Overall, what's your feeling on this section? You know, what do you think of the abilities that are in here? And for Tom, what do you think of the FAQ that clarified how the command traits interact with the battle traits? That's a special one just for Tom. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'll clarify. Jeff, we'll start off with you.
So I'm going to take probably I don't know how controversial this will be, but it might be a controversial point of view on it. I like the rules, but I do feel a little bit like I'm overloaded with these special rules to keep track of during the game, because, you know, I've got all of these war scrolls, I've got whatever's happening in the scenario, I've got you know, battalions, I've got to keep track of my opponents if I'm in a tournament, my opponents' battalions and everything and how those interact, and then these allegiance abilities, you know, and traits and all that stuff. And to my mind, it's a little too much. Now, it might just feel that way right now. It might be the case that in 12 months, after I've used these for a while and used all these war scrolls for so long that they're second nature, that this is a welcome layer of complexity on top of everything else. But right now, to me, it feels like a little too much. Now I have 3 more things I have to keep track of, not just for me, but for my opponent in a game if I'm trying to really, you know, be in control of everything that's happening and have a grip on the situation. Having said that, I do think that it might be something that I learned to really like and I appreciate once I memorize it. And additionally, I do think that they're all really cool. I like all the rules. They don't seem to be too over the top. I like that the new battle tomes are bringing out the allegiance abilities for the things like Bone Splitters and all the new factions. I think that's really cool too. So it's a nice way to personalize and theme an army, and you know, I'm all for it. It's just right now it does feel a little too much in terms of rules to keep track of in the middle of a game.
I get that. I feel that because I think that you're right. We got hit with so much stuff here. There's an element of like, I don't think everybody should feel it's compulsory to use all of it at once, right? It's okay to ease into this stuff. Like, you don't have to flip on every switch all at once, game one. You know, we don't need to go back to like exactly what happened at the beginning of when AOS first came out and everybody was like throwing their collection on the table at once and then playing a game and wondering why it was really difficult to play. Well, like, maybe because we should have eased into this, you know. You don't just like cannonball into water when you're unsure of the temperature, right? Maybe you dip a toe in first. And so I think that's all right. I agree. I don't think you should hesitate to use them if your whole group decides you want to, but I don't think you should feel compulsed like you have to. I'm with that. Tommy, what about you, sir? What's your feeling on this? Do you want me to explain the FAQ thing that I mentioned?
Yes, please. Like, I may know what you're talking about.
All right, so specifically, some of the command traits. So, for example, if we take the death command trait being the one that everybody talks about, right? So the death ability is that if your units are within 10 inches of your general or a hero, they basically gain a 6-up sort of, damage shield, right? It happens in the damage phase against wounds and mortal wounds. There's a command trait called Ruler of the Night that effectively bumps it to a 5-up, right? Okay. But they clarified that in cases like that, where it's the command trait of your general, only your general's bubble extends that ability. He isn't changing the ability for the whole army. So it's not like your whole army, because your units get the ability if they're around your general or any hero, right? But if they're just around this hero, they're still on 6-up. They have to be around your general to be on 5-up.
Okay, so they dialed it down from a 9 to a 7.5. Like, I mean, that's still really good, is what I would say.
Sure. No, that's fine. It was an interesting point of clarification, and I think it is bad wording in the initial text. Like, if that's really what they intended, I'll be frank, that isn't how it reads.
Right.
Right. I get it. Once they say it, I can look into the text and get that reading, but I had to go find that reading based on having that other information, right?
Right.
So,
and what was the other question?
What do you think of the allegiance abilities overall? Do you like them? Are you happy with what you've got?
I think that some are clearly stronger than others. One thing that they haven't, let me say it this way. I think it's clear in the text. I think that people have misread this. For those that have allegiance to, Rotbringers, Nurgle Rotbringers, or Stormcast Eternals, if you have allegiance to those things, you don't have allegiance to Order. That's clearly spelled out in the allegiance rules, but people haven't connected those dots yet.
Right.
And so when they play Rotbringers, they're like, "Oh, I'm playing Rotbringers, so I get a Blight King," to use this example we've been using, as battle line. Okay, but you don't also gain the Chaos Allegiance ability. Because Chaos
You'll get the Rotbringers ability when the Rotbringers book comes out.
Right. That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Right now, at least, it's the way that it's set up is that when you gain that battle line ability, that is in lieu of the faction ability.
Right.
And the idea is that each subfaction will have their own special ability like this eventually. Hypothetically, maybe next month, if this book, The Forces of the Realms, or whatever it's called, is supposed to be coming out, the way it's rumored to come out, where we'll see most of these major sub-factions covered. But the reality is that right now, I think a lot of people haven't connected those dots, and I think it's significant, especially for Death. The Death faction is, I think, the big one, because that ability is just it's good. I mean, there's just no other way to cut that. It's a good ability, but if you do that, you don't gain alternative battle line troops. You have to take generic battle lines for those forces with that Death ability. So that's what I would say.
Sure.
It's easy to misread, is what I would say.
Yeah, and I think that ultimately gets solved with that proposed book. That being said, I think it's also a perfectly good reason. If the way I've seen other people who are aware of this talk about house ruling it is just saying, yeah, sure, have both. And I think that's fine for now, right? Yeah, sure, you declare to this, to Clan Molder so you can get your, battle line giant rats. You've already made a weird choice. I'm not going to kick you twice just because you got to put giant rats on the table everywhere. Go ahead, man. You can also have the chaos ability. It's all good. I'm just saying, we can play friendly games in this time period, right? It's not all hard-edged stuff. But agreed. Hard reading the rules, you're 100% right. So, but that doesn't mean we can't put a Band-Aid over it until we all get our abilities. The other thing I would say is, once again, we've got a case of choose or roll. And if you're not playing in a tournament or something, if you're playing for funsies, roll. Just roll. Why aren't you rolling? Don't pick the same thing every time. Get them dice dropping. There's no reason not to. Let the dice fall.
Because people don't want +1 to melee on their wizard generals.
Boo to that. Get +1 to melee on that wizard general, and you get him in there, and you get him punching some nerds. That's what you do. All right, that's what I say. I shoved my wizard into combat. Now he was a chaos sorcerer on a mana core, so I don't know why. I don't understand why that's bad. I'll take +1 to hit on him. Absolutely, seems fine. All right. So, do we have any other closing thoughts on the allegiance abilities?
No.
All right. I feel we have plumbed this book to the absolute depths because after this, it is only back to the rules, the base rules. So with that, boom, we close it up. The long show today. I know we went for a marathon, so thank you everybody who stuck with us. But there you go. That's our take on the General's Handbook. I mean, obviously, we really probably could go for another 4 hours deep diving on all sorts of elements on here. But to me, let's give a final thought. Worth the purchase or not? There you go. Around the horn. Jeff, worth it or not?
Absolutely.
Tom?
Yeah. There's just, like, yes, if there is one... Honestly, coming out of the gate for a new player, this is the book I'm going to point him to. Like, I would never point them to, like, the Age of Sigmar book or the Realm Gate books. Like, that, I'm not going to point them to that if they're new to the game. This is what I'm going to point them to. Because this is this is what tells people how to play. Like,
yep.
Like, it has the rules in the back, and it has all of the kind of variations of how to play the game. To me, it's a must-buy if you're playing this game.
I agree. It's worth it, and I would also say if you can put it on your device or whatever, it is awesome to have on your device because then you can also get all the points, profiles, and stuff right there on your device. So I did that. It was totally worth it. So there you go. Because it's super sweet to just be able to real quick throw an arm together on your phone, look at the points, go, yep, that looks right. Done. So there you go. That's our thoughts on the General's Handbook and some deep thoughts on all the parts of it. I hope you enjoyed that review, our lengthy review tonight. But we want to know your thoughts too. Put them down in the comments below, of course. We always love to read them. And as always, we very much appreciate you watching, sticking with us throughout the show. And of course, we'll see you next Wednesday.